to their educational achievement, women have shown an increased presence in the workforce. Companies that are led by women tend to perform better than companies led by men. The most innovative companies are the ones that promote and retain women. But as we know from Sheryl Sandberg, Chief Operations Officer at Facebook, women are not advancing to executive positions in direct proportion to men. Only 4.6% of chief executive officers of Fortune 500 companies are women. And this is not just in the business world, this is also in the nonprofit sector and in education, where over 75% of the teaching force are women. Women are advancing. 51.1% of women in 2011 make up high-paying and management professional-related positions. But there are still consequences of women not advancing to executive-level positions. And one consequence is that there are a lack of role models for women to aspire to. For women, most often, they need to see it before they can be it. They need to see women like themselves who have advanced and have made it to that level. Women gain confidence from sharing stories of other women who have succeeded. And the second consequence of women not advancing to executive positions is that at the top of many companies, there lacks the diversity of thought. And that's most concerning to me because diverse ideas drive innovation. So I started to think about Sheryl Sandberg's talk, and I wondered, she says that women make different choices, and it's hard for women to stay in the workforce because of these different choices. And the way to advance women to executive levels is to retain them. So I started to think, is it motherhood? Is it extra family responsibilities, lack of mentorship, discrimination? But what really fascinated me was early adulthood, the time when men and women are seemingly at the same level right out of the gate, that if you're so lucky to graduate from a four-year college and go right into the workforce. What's happening there? And so I started to think about myself at 22, and I started this research a while ago so I can remember some of it. My first job was a teacher at the high school I went to. And I remember being extremely stressed and overwhelmed and anxious, and it had nothing to do with school violence or the students. It was really my shifting role from a student to a teacher. And since it was the high school that I went to, my old teachers were now my colleagues. So instead of saying, hey, Mr. So-and-so, it was, hi, Ernie. It was very awkward. And I'm sure it was awkward for them. But also during this time, I remember just coming from college and being really interested in bringing educational ideas and different concepts and bringing these to department meetings. But I was so nervous about this. I was nervous because I didn't know how it would be received, and I felt like it wasn't my place yet, and I felt like I couldn't bring these ideas to the table. And I did bring some of these ideas, and I was told by an older colleague to not speak up for about 2 years and to keep these ideas in. And also, myself and my other younger colleagues were told to stay under the radar and not, even if it was a positive, innovative, exciting idea, kind of keep that to yourself. Just go along to get along. And I think they were saying these things to be protective of us. And so I learned that you might almost get in trouble if you spoke up. And so, but fortunately, throughout my 20s, I did benefit from mentors who encouraged my voice. And I continued in my graduate studies, and I came across the theory of emerging adulthood. Emerging adulthood is a distinct new developmental stage. It's taking adults longer to grow up because of people are getting married later, they're having children later, and there's an increase in people attending higher education. And during emerging adulthood, people are exploring their identity, they're experiencing instability, they're self-focused, and they're feeling in between. They don't feel like they're an adult, and they don't feel like they're an adolescent. But it's a time of possibilities. It's a unique period to develop characteristics that will help you throughout your life. But because the transitions during this time are so, people are moving, they're changing jobs, they're forming romantic relationships, mental health disorders are prevalent. 1 in 4 emerging adults will experience a depressive episode by the age of 24. And 1 in 5 emerging adults meets the criteria for an anxiety disorder, a highly treatable disorder once it's identified. But emerging adult women are more likely than men to report symptoms of depression and are at a higher risk group for trauma. So what does this have to do with advancing women and making money for companies? Well, 82% of working women experience stress and anxiety in their everyday lives. And women are 2 times more likely to report stress-related disorders than men are. And this is costly for companies. $42 billion is spent in the United States on the direct and indirect costs of stress-related disorders. And some of these include worker absenteeism, frequent utilization of the healthcare, and reduced workplace productivity. And women are actually health leaders in their communities. The healthier a woman is, the healthier her husband is, her partner, and her children and families. So it pays to understand this because it could be affecting your male workers as well. Emerging adult women are learning and making choices that could affect them for the rest of their lives. So when you think about a woman's workplace productivity, you could also be thinking about the male's workplace productivity. So I wanted to know more, and I began studying emerging adult women in this 22 to 25 period, just out of college and in the new job for the first time. What I found out a ton, but I really, 4 main themes emerged. And the first is the context of choice. In the context of choice, emerging adult women experience a shift in sense of self. They essentially feel like as soon as they graduate college, everything was previously laid out for them, but now they're in the real world for the first time, making decisions, and this causes a lot of emotional conflict. And it seems like they said everything was previously laid out for me. In high school, if I had a question, I could go to a guidance counselor and ask a question, or my coach. In college, they had the resident directors to talk to. And it says here, they felt like they shifted from a patient receiving care to an agent, taking on adult roles for the first time. And so I just went through a workplace transition as well. So why is it more intense for an emerging adult woman? Well, emerging adult women have not developed their self-concept yet. They are exploring their identity. So when they say, I'm trying to find myself, I'm trying to see what I'm good at, it's because they have an underdeveloped identity. So they really don't know. And also, boys are actually socialized to make choices earlier, and women do tend to talk about their choices. And a lot of times, women make career choices based on what their parents or their boyfriends or their partners perceive or think about their careers. So it's a more complicated issue for women. And also it's a time when they age out of care. They had care in high school, they had care in college, and now all of a sudden they're 22, and there's not that person to go talk to. So that makes it a more complex issue. The second theme that came out was emerging adult women experience a shift in self-perception in the context of achievement, and they experience it as vital to their self-esteem. It serves as a source of validation to achieve. So anytime there was a promotion or a presentation, there was a lot of emotional conflict surrounding that. Now, so there was a lot of emotional conflict. Now, I want to achieve at my new job too. So why is it more important for an emerging adult woman? Well, these presentations and promotions are a way to gauge their success. Because in high school and in college, they always got grades. So promotions and achievement serve as a way to get those grades. Now, why do they feel this way? Well, a mature sign of adulthood is being able to tolerate uncertainty on daily performance. And that comes from experience. So whereas I have experience succeeding, so I can think about my daily performance and I don't need that constant feedback, but emerging adult women need that. So it's vital to their self-esteem. The third theme that emerged was that emerging adult women, for the most part, experience conflict and distress in the context of coping. They use indirect coping mechanisms and avoidance to deal. And during this time, emerging adult women are in the stage of authenticity versus voicelessness. So when they would have trouble with a coworker, or they would feel like their superiors yelled at them, or they had a disagreement with somebody, more often than not, they chose to hold in what was happening and not confront that issue. And a lot of times, they just thought that they were going to leave their position. They weren't going to say anything. They were not going to challenge their boss, and they were just going to leave. And the cost of retraining is costly for companies. That's something to think about. And the fourth context is the context of support systems. Emerging adult women experience health and well-being in the context of support systems. The support systems that the emerging adult women described help them see things in a different light. They help them grow, they help them develop, they help them recognize their motivation and potential. They looked out for them. Now, it's so important for emerging adult women to have these support systems because they're developing their self-concept, they're developing their voice. And so they need people who are helping bring out that voice. A lot of times, the support systems were described as kind of mining for gold. They were drawing out parts of their identity that they didn't know before. So they brought something to the table that the emerging adult women were not aware of. And so it's so important because they're developing that self-concept during this time to have mentors that encourage that. So what can companies do to tap into the potential of emerging adult women and retain them? And the one thing they can do is assess their commitment level. How comfortable are you? How do you promote? How do you promote within a company? And provide experiences for growth and exploration. Because the emerging adult women were so uncertain in their daily lives and did not know which choices they were going to make, and every single person that I researched did not plan on staying in the position that they were in at 22 to 25 for the rest of their lives. It'd be helpful if companies created lots of opportunities for growth, because chances are they're not going to want to be doing that same type of work that they're doing at 22 when they're 27, 28, 35. And that's a way to keep them in by providing constant opportunities for growth. Also, encourage a culture of direct communication. A lot of times, the emerging adult women felt that they were going to be yelled at. They anticipated a negative response from their superiors and their coworkers. So if you encourage a culture of direct communication, like, I'm not going to bite your head off if you bring an idea to the table, that would be beneficial for them. And also mentor. If you're going to create a mentoring program, it's important to understand that the women that I studied, 30% of the women mentioned support systems that were at work, and none of them were official mentors. So if you're dumping money into a mentoring program, make sure you're trying to find mentoring experiences that help people develop their voice and their self-concept and their authenticity. And for emerging adult women, design your own report card. And if you're having trouble doing this, look to somebody you want to emulate and see what they do. And just create a checklist of behaviors and make choices in line with that person. And then also, create your own board of directors. Who helps you see something in a different light? Who helps you identify what's already present in you without imposing their ideas? And finally, and someone told me this last week, but I think it applies to emerging adulthood, just kind of remember that emerging adulthood and transitioning to the workforce is like stepping into a pool. And at first, it's really cold. It's a new pool. But once you get in, it gets warmer. Companies, don't be afraid to let your emerging adult women splash. Thank you.